Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I imagine there are people just like me who were at 1:26. I looked at the clock and was like, oh, I have to go now. So nice to meet all of you that I've been having lunch with. I'm leaving. My name is Lisa Janicki-Hinchliffe. I'm a professor and a librarian at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And it's my privilege to do a little bit of an overview of the Subscribe to Open model. And then we will have 3 case studies from the publishers that we have here. And I'll just let them introduce themselves when they are coming through. So I'm going to sort of do a bit of an overview here, particularly pointing out in this case that Subscribe to Open is a business model for reading and publishing that always succeeds in an outcome, but it may not always succeed in the outcome that we want. And so it is a unique model in that way, though, in that it always results in what it promises. I think it's important for us to understand that Subscribe to Open sits in a very large ecosystem of open access business models, which I have categorized in my mind this way. Micropayments, individual and aggregated, and that's our read and publish agreements, article processing charges, et cetera. Collective action models, and subvention models. And the overall trend in implementation of these models is that they rely on payments from institutions rather than individuals, that they are based on subscription models. So the most successful open access publishing models that scale look like a subscription in some significant ways. They use contracts of a year or longer. They operate at scale on the publisher and or the payee side, or both. And they work within existing author workflows. No one wants to disrupt the author who doesn't actually, in the end, care about how publishing works. Imagine that. So the other thing I'll say is, as we look at these models, we have models that are article focused, and that would be your micropayment models, whether they're individual or aggregated. And then we have models that are focused at the journal level. Okay, and you've no doubt been seeing that Subscribe to Open is sitting in our second category here of collective action and working at the journal level. So not at the article level. So interestingly enough, Subscribe to Open relies on payments from institutions rather than individuals. It is based on subscription models. It uses contracts of a year or longer. It sometimes operates at scale. Not always, and that is also one of the advantages, is that it actually doesn't have to operate at scale. And it absolutely works within existing author workflows. So all of those things that I said were the trends in the models, Subscribe to Open fits within those trends. There's been a great growth in Subscribe to Open from its first offering in 2020 from Annual Reviews. It primarily is designed for titles where APCs are not a suitable path to open access. These are often titles that are smaller or published by a not-for-profit publisher. The model is relatively simple to adopt as it relies on existing library budgets and processes. And there's a Subscribe to Open community of practice that is an active group of publishers, librarians, funders, and vendors that are supporting the development of the model. So it has a cross-industry, cross-sector community that is supporting it. There is a title list of Subscribe to Open titles that are currently in the model at this website that no one could type in, but you can get it from the slides later. But you can see the growth from 2020 to 2025 here, from starting with fewer than 20, going all the way up to almost 400 in 2025. So the basics of Subscribe to Open, and looking out in the audience, I feel like I'm telling people what they already know, but we want to level set here today. In Subscribe to Open, library subscribers continue to subscribe to ensure that they have access. And if the subscriptions reach a collective threshold, the published content will then be open to all. So it has an incentive for subscribers, because if the collective level is not met, then the content will be closed. And so it's a risk analysis for the subscribing institutions. So just to be clear, there's two potential outcomes for content access in Subscribe to Open. If the subscriber threshold is reached, the content is then openly available. Everyone has access to read, including subscribers. If the subscriber level is not reached, the content is not open, and only subscribers have access to the content. So regardless of the outcomes, subscribers always have access to the content, but whether others have access to the content is a result of the threshold. Now, the other thing that subscribers often get in these models, which we'll see shortly, is they often receive additional benefits in addition to the guarantee of access. They may receive access to the back files that are not open. They may have access to other current content that is subscriber open. So a given publisher may not have all of their titles in Subscribe to Open. So only some of them may have a threshold that's being reached, whereas others will only be available to subscribers. And we also might see that if the threshold is not reached, subscribing institutions will still be able to publish open for their authors. Lots of variations and experimentation, as we would expect in this innovative sector. So there's some implementation challenges for publishers here that I think is worth pointing out, is that publishers must maintain their subscription infrastructure and ability to publish articles closed, while also developing and supporting the ability to publish open. And there is relatively minimal revenue growth potential in this model. So it typically also works for mature titles where there's an existing level of subscribers that is sustainable over the long term. As I mentioned, there are two possible outcomes. And in the early days, we only had examples of where the threshold had been reached. And so that was what people then were thinking is like, oh, this always works. Unfortunately, it does not always work to result in open access content. So these are example publisher outcomes for one or more journals in 1 or more years. So you'll even see that there's publishers listed in both categories. There's far more publishers that could be in the first category where the subscriber threshold was reached, the content is openly available, everyone has access, including subscribers. And of course, I've listed the 3 case studies we have here today, as well as a few other notable examples, Project Muse, EDP Sciences, and Karger Publishers. But I also will point out that there are cases where the subscriber threshold was not reached, the content is not openly available, and only subscribers have access to the content. And the 2 publishers that have experienced that are EDP Sciences and Karger. So again, you see they have some success, they have mixed success with this model. So as I promised, we have 3 case studies for our conversation here today. Each person will take some time to describe their particular implementation of the Subscribe to Open model so that we'll hear some of the innovation and experimentation that is taking place across these models. And then we'll open it up at the end to a general conversation and questions. So we'll go in this order: annual reviews, Bio 1, and then the American Physiological Society. So with that, let me hand it over to Mike.
Sure. All right. Thank you, Lisa. Can I just use this thing? No, I can't. There we go. All right. So I sent these slides to Lisa a couple of days ago and then thought of a million other things I wanted to say. So I'll see if I can keep it brief. First, it's helpful to understand what we do. A review article as an invited expert writing an overview of a particular topic. It often represents an accumulation of knowledge built over a career, and it's kind of actually better to think of it like a monograph. So it's got qualities of both journals and books, and when you think of it that way, you can kind of understand why the prevailing OA models don't really work for us. In fact, I think if this were about gold OA and I told you what our APC would be, it would probably clear the room even more quickly than I would clear it normally. So it's a long form article. It's 25, 35 pages, and we have these editorial committees that fly around and invite the experts, and they write. It's not an easy thing to achieve, and it's not an easy thing to write either. Most of our authors have been doing this for a very long time, and they do this in their spare time. This is not attached to a grant-funded research project. It really is kind of like writing a book. So several years ago, we faced this dilemma of not participating in the open access movement at all, or finding something that works for us that's different. So we began by kind of piecemeal approach. We had a few journals trying it out as a pilot project, 5 at first, and then we added a few more, and 8 titles. And then in 2023, we went all in. We put all 51 of our journals into the program. And this is our 4th year, and we've been successful every year. I'm glad that we were in that first column from Lisa's slides. And I think our program is probably the easiest to understand because we just put everything in. There isn't, one journal in, one journal out, or anything like that. The offer applies across the entire spectrum of everything we publish. We also publish throughout the year. Historically, annual reviews, because the word annual is in the title, we had just 1 volume each year. But we actually publish throughout the year, and the orders come in throughout the year. If you think of the way things used to be, if we publish one thing a year, the orders would come in then, not, so we can't make too many promises. We have these things coming out, and we track the revenue throughout the year. Thankfully, we've been successful every year, but we do have to keep an eye on things every month throughout the year. The thresholds have been met. We track the revenue targets, and then we publish the new volumes under a Creative Commons license. So that's a kind of a very simple approach for us. But the important thing that we are working on now is how to distinguish between subscribers and non-subscribers. The most important one, again, because we publish throughout the year and not just a single annual volume, subscribers get access on average 3 to 5 months before non-subscribers. So when we talk to librarians and we talk about the value proposition, why they should continue subscribing, that's the chief reason. Their users get access long before any non-subscribers do. All right, secondly, archive access. Annual reviews goes back to 1932. That's, other than the past few years, all of that is behind the paywall. So subscribers have access, or the opportunity to access back volumes, and increasingly we are including that with our subscription offers, either for renewing subscribers or for new subscribers. Finally, this does not imply any guarantees. As I said, because we publish throughout the year, we have to wait. I can't tell you what the journals publishing at the end of the year are going to look like. As much as we would like to say, we can't promise that. There's no guarantees with Subscribe to Open. In fact, we started out with this pilot project. It's very experimental. It never really loses that experimental nature because we have to keep starting over every year. And as things go through, tracking the revenue closely. The only way to get permanent access to the journals is to subscribe as usual. So we talk about the real benefit of Subscribe to Open as business as usual. You don't have to change your relationships. Libraries don't have to do anything differently. Just continue as you always have been, and you're guaranteed access just like you would in the normal business model. And then I think this last one we don't talk about a whole lot, but it's actually really important. When you think about what we do with the review articles as an expert summary, a long form article that has often hundreds of references at the end, it's the perfect vehicle for, say, a beginning researcher or a graduate student to get up to speed quickly. This is exactly the kind of thing that should be available everywhere. And we're seeing enormous amounts of usage from small colleges, universities, the developing world, also non-academic research institutes, corporations, everywhere. People are using this and they have access to it when they would never have access before. So our authors now are reaching a much wider audience than they would have ever before. And their work, their life's work in some cases, is now, because of Subscribe to Open, is available to everyone. So that's all I have for now. Are you next?
Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Orr. I'm with Bio1. And I just want to say a brief thank you to everyone in the community of practice. Annual reviews, we've learned a ton from Stacy and her group at APS. It's a very collaborative community, this community of practice. We are a small biological sciences aggregator. So we are not a publisher, so we're a little bit different than others. We were founded 25 years ago by librarians and small publishers together with a mission to maximize access to scholarly research produced by small, independent, nonprofit presses, small societies, small university presses, working in specialized areas of the biosciences. So when we, and the other half of our mission is not only to maximize access to that research, but to return sustaining revenue to our community of over 100 of these small publishers, many of whom the revenue from their subscriptions that we're able to deliver globally is the only revenue they get. So we could not, when we wanted to increase open access, to bring more people to read this material and to benefit from this material in environmental sciences and others, we had to be very mindful that we are not here for ourselves, we are here for the benefit of those small societies that are doing work in these specialized research areas. So we couldn't be too experimental. We had to keep a lot of the, as Mike said, business as usual of subscriptions, so not to disrupt the sustaining revenue that our partners have come to rely on over the years. So that was something very much in our minds. We also try to work at scale. We currently aggregate all of their content into a single product called Bio1 Complete. And so we can't break that up and divvy it up, so we had to do something that could work for the maximum number of our publishers instead of saying, okay, you're going to go try open access this way and you're going to try something else. We needed to do something at scale for a significant part of our community. So those are some of the things that we were thinking about and how our mission tied to how we have implemented Subscribe to Open. Over the years, we've been able to deliver back $78 million to our publishers, which if I were Elsevier Springer, that would be like, clink, a little drop in the bucket. But over the decades, that has been really meaningful, sustaining revenue to these small societies working in, just a specific area of ornithology or coastal research or a particular area of entomology, things like that. Okay? And again, APCs, not appropriate for our publishers. These are, again, mostly single title publishers publishing, say, 50 articles a year in their single journals. Even, APCs are not, the funding picture is very different in our fields, and they also often don't have a mechanism. Our publishers might not have a mechanism to even collect an APC. So those were many of the reasons we went in this direction for Subscribe to Open, to increase accessibility to this content. So again, the reason is to help sustain the publishers that we're working with. And we're very proud to say we're not in either of Lisa's columns yet, because this is our first term year. 2026 is our first term year. And we are bringing together, of our 157 publishers in our cohort, 54 of them, representing 71 journals, are in the S2O subset, including the first S2O publishers from Japan and China. And we are really, really proud of that. So how does it work for us, for an aggregator? Because again, we're a little bit different from APS and from annual reviews. So as I said, we have a single product called Bio1 Complete, which is a database of over 200 titles in this area. And so we had to make sure, again, that the subscriber benefit was very strong. There is no, I don't want to dig in too much on this, but we're a read-only offer. Because we are not the publisher, we are an aggregator. Our publishers manage their publishing policies and things like that. So our offer to libraries is exclusive reading benefit. There's no linked publication benefit, okay? But what we do offer is guaranteed access to all current year content for both the non-S2O, like the standard subscribed titles, and the S2O titles. We also have a very rich back file. Now this donut is not to scale, so so forgive me. But the inside of that is all of our back file content, going back to the late 90s, and for some of our journals back to like 1965. That back file content, which is about 200,000 of our 230,000 articles, is all back file. That is going to be reserved for our ongoing supporting subscribers. Okay? And for the current, which is the outer side of that donut, half donut, croissant, there are many of our journals that are not participating in S2O. So the S2O portion, oops, as I trip on something, are these titles. So the only way to get continuing access to the entire database is to continue to be a subscriber. And if we achieve our target, we will be making an announcement in the next 6 weeks or so. If we achieve that target, then just the 2026 content from the 71 participating titles will go open. What that actually translates to is probably about 2,000 to 3,000 articles, so around 1% of the database, which seems really small, but that's a lot of current content for many, many journals across the fields and across the disciplines that we serve. Okay? And again, trying to balance, as always, preserving that financial sustainability for both of our libraries and our publishers. Remember, we were founded by constituents from both communities, so that's always something we are thinking about very heavily. So there are no new prices, no new pricing policies. People are paying the same fees that they paid before. There's not a step up to do this. Again, business as usual. We say this all the time. It's the same package, same pricing. The other thing that we are doing that's interesting for Bio1 is we are keeping this cohort stable for the next 3 years. This is a 3-year pilot that we are implementing because we wanted to have stability in the collection for libraries and for our publishers. And we also wanted to start to be able to gather data on this. So by keeping that cohort stable of 71 titles over the next 3 years, we'll be able to see. I mean, it's great for libraries. You don't have to wonder, is it S2O this year but not next year? So we didn't want to mess around with that. But we also wanted to be able to build a history of data and feedback and see what's going to happen. You know, the more we kind of mixed up that title list, we might not get consistent usage, consistent citation. The story that we'd be able to tell and understand would be quite muddied. So again, we're a small nonprofit of 8 people, so we like to keep it very simple where we can. And this was another reason that we are implementing this as a 3-year fixed pilot to give assurances to those publishers for the next 3 years that they'll be okay, to let our libraries know, yes, we're committing at scale to these titles, having a sustainable path to open access over the next couple of years. So that's a little bit about Bio1. I think that's my last one, and I am going to hand it over to Stacy Burke.
All right, great job. You want to swap? Yeah. Hi, everybody. It's nice to see some people that stopped at my table that I told to come, so thank you. I'm Stacy Burke from the American Physiological Society, and I'm glad to be here with these guys. One is a little bit of a paved driver. He started the initiative, and then we're kind of catching up. So we've been learning a lot. And she mentioned the Subscribe to Open Community Practice, which has been very helpful. who are we? So this is who we are. We were formed in 1867, so we've been going on quite a while. But really, we represent scientists. That's exactly what we do, our entire remit. And really, we've launched this new campaign called The Science Life Depends On, because we're trying to say that the more the community of active scientists and educators around the world, they're driving collaboration and scientific discoveries in the biomedical space, and we need this to be known, and we need our content out there, we need our research to be known, because our physiology is a science that life depends on. But we are a scientific community, so we're driven by a board of active scientists that really are asking us for a lot of things, and this is really about how our science is impacting health, and really that's our remit, period. So why subscribe to Open? Well, because we believe physiology advances most effectively when it reflects the full diversity of biological systems, populations, and research perspectives. And really, those all drive our community of discovery. And so our community, which I mentioned, is all about people that drive physiology and drive life changes and worldwide. So they're the ones that are at our leadership level saying, we need our research in the hands of everybody globally. How can we do that? And of course, the other part of that community is saying, but we need to do it sustainably. So what can we do? But the most important thing for that group and most of everyone in there is that it's shared, cited, and built upon globally. I mean, and this is really the key point. And I have this section here that really talks about how physiology has made an impact already, and that people need physiology all the time before they can take that next step into scientific discovery. But really what we're here to talk about is our libraries and what they needed. And Christine made it a very valid point. You need access, and you need to make sure that you're giving access to your community on a regular basis to very good literature. You need it to be budget friendly. You want it to be stable, like Christine had mentioned. You want to be able to be predictable on your benefits. But you also need flexible options because everybody comes from a different size institution, different globally. They have different funder requirements. They have different needs across every situation. It's not one size fits all for sure. But really, we need more value. I think our librarian community has been asked to do a new element in their career, which is you need to make sure our authors can publish. And it's like, well, we're just subscribing, so now we have to find budget to do something else that we don't have budget for. So really, how can we accommodate that healthily? So all these three got together and we said, what can we do? I will say that, I do go big or go home, which is an American term. And I know that, Annual Reviews has also done that. They've got a section of it. But we really did our 10 primary research journals. And the point of that is because those are the ones that are funded and they're the new content. And this is what our authors need. They're saying, we need to publish in open access. What can you do for us and our community and our research? But really, our entire suite scans the full biometrical research continuum. And it goes from different areas of the body, but also the way they all connect. And everything is needed in order to advance biomedical. So I do have one subscription, Life's Answers. I know that sounds simple, and it is, but you have to dig a little bit. You got to dig a little bit. But so what we do is our Subscribe to Open journals are the 10 journals that you see on this side, and then these are subscription only. But really, we're trying to take that fundamental insight and turn it into real life science impact. So the most important part for all the libraries here is, what are we giving you, right? So we are a little bit more complex because we like to be confusing, but really we're driven by our boards and who are asking us, we need an open access guarantee. So when we're in year 2, year 1, we had given an OA guarantee, but we really didn't communicate it effectively. And so our board was like, but we all have an OA guarantee. And I said, no, you don't. You only if you subscribe to our full digital library. But as we dug into it more, we realized that some people need an OA guarantee for this journal. And so we negotiate that. Some need an OA guarantee for all. But really, it doesn't matter if our triggers are met. And Lisa talked about Subscribe to Open. If all of our revenue triggers are met, we will open up the corpus of content in these 10 journals for that year. But For our customers that subscribe to the digital library, which is this whole package, we give an OA guarantee because we are the publisher and we can. But because it's really, that's the community that we're trying to serve. And so this model does do that. We also give access to our back file, which has, I mean, the reason we have insulin is because of physiology. And so all of this content is constantly cited on a regular basis throughout all literature because it's these methods and techniques you need to have referenced before you can go to that next step. There's a QR code for the benefits and more about our Subscribe to Library, Subscribe to Open at our university, but that's it for me.
Great. So we are now at the point where we could have questions about the specific models, questions about the theoretical model, my part, or additional questions, observations, things people would like to see. So let me open it up and see if anyone has anything they'd like to add to our conversation.
I'm just going to ask if anyone is participant from a library community, anybody that's participating in a Subscribe to Open now that they are aware of? Okay. We've got one. The rest of the room.
I guess I could have raised my hand too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we do. We do. So, great. Thank you.
Here, I have a question. During the discussion with our librarian, when we mentioned S2O for annual reviews, maybe that's a question to Mike. Our librarian said, you promised you will have the content become open access when the revenue met a threshold. Their question is, how can we know the revenue has already met? Because you continue to sell and to have new orders. Yeah, so that is the question. The second one is, the second one is, for some of our librarians, the perpetual access is very important for them. So their question is, suppose we don't have the budget and we canceled it. For the open year, can we get perpetual access as well? For example, Subscribe to Open in 2000, it's the Subscribe to Open year of all the annual reviews journals. And the library canceled the subscription. And can they also have the perpetual access for all the content in 2000? That are the two questions. Yeah.
Sounds like these are both very specific to the conditions of the annual review. So let me have Mike address them to the best he can, and then maybe a conversation.
Yes, okay. Well, once the content is open, it's open. So I guess yes is the answer, but we're not, especially because we're using a Creative Commons license for this open access content. I can't even imagine, we would have to tear that up and republish things. So yeah, once it's open, they have access. Yeah, there's no going back. What was your first question?
How do they know when the threshold?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so
Putting it more bluntly.
yeah. We do make quarterly announcements. In fact, on our website, we have a kind of a running list of things that are open and then things that are in progress. So I think the best thing to do is for them to check the website on a regular basis, and to ask you or ask me. But like I said, we try not to make too many promises in advance. We know within a short time frame how things are going, and so we'll update the website accordingly. Yeah.
One thing I want to distinguish, I think librarians would distinguish between open access content and having perpetual access rights, because I know Annual Reviews has no intention of going out of business, but we know open access content does disappear from the web. So yes, if you have access to it, you have access to it, but open access is not a commitment to perpetual access and not a commitment that the library would be able to archive that, et cetera, especially if it has certain other conditions on it. So I think the question might be a little more nuanced and might be something that would be good for the publishers to think about. Not because you want to plan for going out of business, but it would be part of what's important to librarians.
Yeah, mean, I think this is one of the points that we talk about in the flexibility of what we can do. A lot of librarians come to us and they say they want that additional measure added into our contracts, and we're able to do that, but only for their subscription year. So in the event that we close and you're not a customer, sorry, we wouldn't give perpetual rights to our open access content. But if you wanted that as an individual, I think that all of us would do that easily.
Yeah, so open access and perpetual being made a distinction. So I think our colleague from India? India, yes, thank you.
My question already she asked that same question. My question is, suppose already you reached that target or your threshold, whether further year that subscription to open, that price will be reduced or same amount you'll charge?
Hi. Subscribed, I'm going to speak kind of generally about subscribe to open rather than just the Bio One policy. But a subscribe to open offer is an annual offer for that year's content. So it is not flipping the whole journal open access or anything. So for us, you know, we have a 3-year pilot for subscribe to open. So we will do 2026, and that only affects content in 2026 that may go open. For 2027, we do it all again. And then again after that. So each year there is a threshold target that must be met because we are publishing new content all the time, as is everyone. So I can speak from a pricing perspective. We have a standard modest increase every year, and that gives you, guaranteed access to the current year's content and our back file. We have a 3% annual global increase on our package. So each year it will go up a little bit, but no, we don't, frankly, our prices are pretty low as they are, but no, it doesn't get reduced with, because we had a successful year in 2026, the prices aren't going down in 2027. That's not how it works. That would not be sustainable for our publishers, so.
Yeah, and I think that, to your point, I think that we're navigating a situation where we're like, we know regions have different requirements and different pricing structures, and so we're kind of trying to work locally with your interests. But what we're doing at APS is saying, listen, we want to be able to tell our community that we opened up our journals earlier, and the more multi-year agreements we have, I'll give another discount. So if you get in a 3-year agreement with me, then I know, and I know that I can say, okay, by December, I know those guys are going to renew. I can count them, and we can open up earlier. So that's really the reward. But I do say that, even when we're in subscribe to open, the only people that will get access to these exclusive benefits are the subscribers. So even though our literature will be read globally and more accessibly on the front end, all those benefits are only for our subscribers. And that's because we're trying to be sustainable. And to the point earlier, we have normal attrition each year that we're trying to accommodate, and that's because everybody has different, revenue situations at their universities. So really that 3% she's talking about is really the sustaining number that we kind of go for.
Yeah, I think it's interesting whether we have multi-year contracts in the subscribe to open versus others that are very committed to an annual. Yes.
First of all, great discussion. I wonder how the DOAJ indexing works in case of journals that flip back and forth.
Yeah. So I think the answer there is not as well as we'd like it to.
I can take that one. I am actually on the DOAJ editorial committee, and there's only 4 of us, and I don't know how I got on there, but I'm glad. I'm not an editor. And they do go to the community, it's like a small community, to say, hey, what do we think about this? They did add a flag in DOAJ recently, but they've got some rules that actually don't apply physically to, because they say you can't ever publish anything that's not open access. And so I'm still negotiating it. I will say we just got a message about 2 days ago, and I said, no, I don't agree with this, because I want authors to know that we're in DOAJ. That's really important to that author community. But I don't want librarians to think because we're in DOAJ, then you don't have to subscribe. And that's really a confusing thing. And I think that they're trying to navigate that as well. There's been some changes recently, and I'm getting really too deep into library, so Lisa, give me back, but KBART that offers that option to be able to show that this is a mixed model. And so we're trying to do that in the metadata, but
Yeah, that's one of the tricks with S2O that makes it different than other open access models or potentially open access models. This is conditional open access. It is not guaranteed. And that is a little bit incompatible with how DOAJ has currently structured themselves. DOAJ has been running for a long time and we're new. So we're a new model. So there is a lot of discussion right now about how can DOAJ accommodate these kinds of titles where it could be open one year or closed the next.
And the other battle we face increasingly is libraries who, either through DOAJ or some other system, they recharacterize annual reviews within their systems as an open access publisher, and then they are forbidden from subscribing under any circumstances because we've got that sort of status.
So I think that what this tells us is even though there's quite a bit of success with this model and application, and it is serving libraries and publishers, and I accidentally got rid of the slide that talked about the community of practice. So, but for those of you who are interested, I also think very unique to have a cross-sector working group community that is addressing some of these issues and trying to figure out, because in my mind, I have as much of an argument that they shouldn't be in DOAJ as much as you want them to be there. So that's a nice, no, I know. So I think we're still working out, as we create new models, then all of these systems have to adjust around them, and they don't always adjust elegantly, especially the first time. And so it's just a process of continuing to work on this. I know there were a few other questions, but I am cognizant that we are at the end of our time. And so what I would invite you to do, I know our panelists are willing to stay and chat. I will be happy to stay and chat, but I know some of you may also want to get to the closing session, which starts at 2:30. So thank you so much for joining us here today.